no one should have to choose between their own safety and their pets. But nearly half of domestic abuse survivors delay leaving because they can't bring their pets with them. Purina is helping to create more pet-friendly domestic violence shelters through the Purple Leash Project, so survivors and their pets can escape and heal together. Visit Purina.com/purple to learn more.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Hey, where you been? Buckeye Talk is about to begin. Hey, come on in.
Welcome back to Buckeye Talk. I'm Stephen Means. This is your Tuesday pod during Ohio State's second bye week that returns to the field next Saturday to face Penn State, the game that obviously has lost some juice in comparison to where it was supposed to be heading into the preseason with Penn State losing its last 4 games and firing its head coach, James Franklin. Meanwhile, the Buckeyes are 7-0, 4-0 in Big Ten play and look like the foregone conclusion best team in the country and are well positioned to not only repeat as national champions, but also win the Big Ten for the first time since 2020, and it'll also be the third time in Ryan Day's career. If he does that, this is a Rants pod. It's been a while since we've done one of these pods, and it just felt like the right time to do that. That's Ohio State's again 7-0, 4-0 in Big Ten play. 5 Big Ten games left, 5 regular season games left in a year, where as long as they and Indiana take care of business, given what their schedules look like, they're probably going to face each other as 2 12-0 teams in the Big Ten championship game. But, of course, Ohio State has the very big game against Michigan at the end of next month. Still waiting for them, and that's probably the biggest question mark left about the Buckeyes. As we used to do these all the time. Listen, the branch pod, this is all about our texters. Get the text 614-350-3315. I got a good amount of rants I want to get through. Some of them will overlap. So if I'm going to read the full rant for the sake of reading the full rant, but if part of the rant is a subject I've already touched on, I probably won't touch on it again. I'll just leave it to be at that. But this first rant is from Jack in the 281, and it's, I think, my favorite rant of all time. Seriously. It's literally a rant about how much he doesn't like rants. Steven, here's my rant. Will everyone stop ranting about everything? Think about it. Texas and Penn State were the preseason number ones, and the first hates their preseason Heisman quarterback and has no margin for error going forward for the playoff, and the second fired their head coach after 6 games. Could you imagine if Julian Sand had the same on-field performance as Arch Manning? That would be a rant. Penn State loses in overtime to Oregon and completely folds. We lost to Oregon in a 1-point loss last season, and our coaching staff fixed the problems. They didn't quit, nor did the players quit, which seems to be happening in State College. That would be a rant. Look at Clemson. Nothing to look at. Look at LSU. Brian Kelly will be changing his least Southern accent very soon. Look at Georgia's inconsistency on both sides of the ball, especially in their defense. Alabama seems to have righted the ship, but they did lose to a 4-loss Florida State team that just lost to Stanford. Look at Miami, ... Okay, they did win Florida, which they put in quotation marks, but they lost to Louisville, and Carson Beck became the real Carson Beck again. I wonder if he's still having fun. My point is, yes, the running game has to improve, but by showing our confidence in the passing game Saturday and considering the youth and inexperience of the room, it's going to get better. And we just won 3 Big Ten road games out of our last 4 games and dominated Minnesota at home, who's played some pretty good football this year. If I'm a fan of any of the aforementioned teams, I'd be ranting, but I'm thrilled to have Ryan Day consistently leading this team and to have the talented coaching staff. Yeah. Yeah. I think those are all fair points. I don't think Texas hates Arch Manning. I just think that development process is maybe taking a little bit longer than it should be taking. And this is not an issue for right now. but this is the second time in the last 36 months that we've seen a 5-star quarterback at a prominent program who had to wait his turn until his third year, and then he finally gets on the field, and it didn't look great, right? Like Kyle McCord didn't look great all the time at Ohio State. It didn't cost them wins like it is at Texas, but he didn't look great. Arch Manning doesn't look great, and to be real with you, his description as a player matches Tavian St. Clair a little bit. But again, this comes back to a little bit of, do you trust Ryan Day's quarterback development over Steve Sarkisian and where you want to go with that? But I'm a little concerned about that. But again, that's a 2 years from now conversation. That's not something we have to have today. The Penn State thing is off the rails. The Clemson thing is off the rails. The LSU thing, I think LSU is LSU. They're good until they play somebody good, and all of a sudden they're not good anymore. I think Georgia's of old is probably not what they are anymore. They don't have a stockpile of defensive talent like they did 2 or 3 years ago when they won back-to-back national titles. And so I don't think they're bad. They're just not as good as they were 3 years ago, because obviously a lot of changes in college football has led to maybe some other teams in the SEC catching up to them, which I guess can be a good and a bad thing depending on which way you want to look at that. Bad loss for Miami. I don't think it knocks them out in terms of, could they still end up meeting Ohio State in the national championship game? I do still think that. But what it's done is it's forced a lot of people, maybe natural pundits, to like chill out with trying to crown everybody in the world not named Ohio State as the best team in the country when we know who clearly the best team in the country is. And I do think that this portion of the schedule was maybe a little bit underrated. And it's because of how people view the Big Ten as a whole, as a conference. They don't get the same respect in the middle class being in the Big Ten as you do maybe in the middle class of the SEC. But Minnesota is a pretty good football team. I think Washington's a pretty good football team too. I think that was disappointing what we saw from them on Saturday against Michigan. That was a bit of, I don't know if I was expecting that. I think we left that Washington game on September 27th feeling like Washington's a good team. It's just Ohio State's better than everybody. And I still think they're a good team, but they're not where I thought they would be. I thought they would be a team in the Big Ten who could at least flirt with a playoff spot if they got to the end of the year and they had one loss heading into that Oregon game, and maybe they can make things interesting. But I no longer think that. I think Minnesota, Drake Lindsey, I've been saying it on his pod for a month and a half now. I think he is a very good quarterback. Do I think he's better than Julian Sand? No. Do I think he is better than Fernando Mendoza? No. But to be frank about it, I don't know if whoever the third best quarterback is in the Big Ten is as secure and locked in as I did when we did our live show a few weeks back and we were talking Big Ten quarterbacks. And I think all three of us in some way, in one order or another, had Dante Moore, Fernando Mendoza, and Julian Sand. I had Julian Sand number 1, Mendoza 2, Dante Moore number 3. I don't like the way Dante Moore has looked over the last couple of weeks. And so I'm not going to just 100% say he's got that third spot on lock. It's his for now, but it's not as in pen as the other two spots are for me. Continue to go through some rants here from Joel in the 604. All right, Stephen, I'm not typically one to look at the negatives, especially while we are having such an amazing year as a team, but there is one thing that's been itching in the back of my brain. Here's a rant for you about a guy that we all love to praise. OC Brian Hartline is not as good as wide receiver coach Brian Hartline, and we need to stop giving him the benefit of the doubt because he is an amazing wide receivers coach. I don't know what Brian is doing up there, but it seems like every game is him stumbling for 2 quarters, and then right near the end of the first half, he'll realize he has weapons to throw to and will take a shot downfield. In my opinion, some of the situational play calling is terrible. I have seen far too many runs on 3rd and long this season, and frankly, the play calling feels extremely mild compared to last year. Now, I know you can't really compare a first-year play caller 7 games into his career to a veteran Chip Kelly, but you would think after spending years behind some of these minds, he would have a little something up his sleeve or some sort of identity. I just worry that come the team up north time, he still hasn't figured out what his play calling identity is, and I worry that our play calling will be too vanilla to win that game. We can't do what we did against Washington. I agree, and I've thrown this idea out to a couple of people. I haven't said it into a microphone yet, I don't think, and if I have, I apologize. Let me know, 614-350-3315. But I was worried about a Kerry Combs situation again, where if you remember, Kerry Combs was an awesome cornerback coach. He was an awesome position coach from the development and the recruiting of the position. But that's not scheming. That's recruiting and development. And the scheming part is a whole nother list of responsibilities. And I don't think anything can ever truly prepare you for it until you do it and you understand what it's like to be the guy who has to make the ultimate decision on that headset. Be the guy who's trying to find the rhythm and the flow every single game. Be the guy trying to implement whatever the game plan is for that week. And it hasn't always looked great. Is some of that not on him? Of course not. His boss is still an offensive mind. And there are things Ohio State wants to get done on a week-to-week basis to where every game is not going to look like the Minnesota game. Every game is not going to look like the Wisconsin game, at least not in the regular season. Could all 12 regular season games look like that? Yes. Julian Sand keeps showing us every single week that, if you want to let me just launch this thing all over the place 45 times a game, I'm probably going to complete all but like 7 of them, and we're going to be good. But that's not the way to go about creating and developing a complete team. They have to learn how to run the ball so that they can run the ball when they need to run the ball, not so they can be a team who does what they did against Michigan last year. It's so they have it down in the situationals. And I think the thing that we have to remember is just like Julian Sand, Brian Hartline is learning on the job. And it's interesting because I think Sand, on what his learning curve as a starting quarterback is he is ahead of, I wouldn't say ahead, he seems to be about where I think us on the outside looking in thought he would be 7 games into this, where he looks really good and I think they can let him do more. I think there's still meat on that bone. I think with Hartline, this is a process, and I guess depending on your expectations of what you thought he was going to be as a play caller that's going to decide whether or not you think he's on schedule, ahead of schedule, or behind schedule. He's a wide receiver. He's a wide receiver coach, and he is coaching at a place who has had a level of quarterback and wide receiver play over the past 7 years that nobody can rival. That combination of things. And so when you look at that, and then you look at what their wide receiver room is right now, and you see a 5-star quarterback who we all spent the last year going, this dude's got an awesome arm. When he gets on the field, they're going to be able to do what they did with C.J. Stroud and Dwayne Haskins. And then they don't do that out the gate. You do kind of like, hey, what's going on here? Like, the best player in college football is a wide receiver, and it feels like there's times where he's not as involved as he should be. The numbers don't necessarily back that up, but I can understand the concept of he's not what I thought he was going to be. I don't think he's a bad coordinator. I think he's a learning coordinator. And I'll give him maybe a little bit more benefit of the doubt because there is a safety net for him that there isn't for Kerry Combs. When they took it away from Kerry Combs, they had to give it to Matt Barnes, and that wasn't much better. If they take this thing away from Brian Hartline, if it ever got to be that bad, we're just going to give it back to Ryan Day for the year, and he's pretty good at this. Right, especially in a playoff situation where he's not worried about everything under the sun. He can just worry about ball. I don't think I'm not as alarmed as I was coming out of the Washington game, but it is still something that I think is more of a bigger conversation and a bigger storyline at this point than I think we're giving it credit for. Because anytime Ohio State does the thing we all think they should do, they do it so well that we don't talk about it as much as we should. But I think what happened in the offseason was so much attention was on why the heck did you hire Matt Patricia that we forgot that Ryan Day's offensive coordinator, he's going from a guy with 20 plus years of experience to a guy with no experience doing this. And I don't think that got talked about it enough because people think this offense is too talented and too good to fail. And I'm not 100% on that idea. I'm about like 70% on that idea, but that 30% weighs heavy on my brain. For the 937, X is a good team. Ohio State beats X team. Turns out X team wasn't good. Ohio State's schedule is soft. They've played no one. This team is shaping up to be a potential super team, and no one is riding them like a dominant SEC team, and it's infuriating. Okay, I'm going to let you guys in on a secret with that. And the only reason I'm going to say it into a microphone is because, one, it's true. We don't have to like hide behind that. And also, Kirk Cignetti kind of hinted that out when he did he did an interview with Joe Klatt. CBS and Fox have no incentive to talk about the SEC. ESPN has no incentive or reason to want to talk about the Big Ten. Is that right? Probably not. Is it weird? Yes, it's weird, but that's what this is, right? You got to promote your product. And right now, Ohio State and the Big Ten are not an ESPN product until December. Alabama and Georgia and the SEC are not a Big Ten Fox product really ever. So it's a frustrating thing. I get it, but also national people don't know that much. They're not there every single day like day-to-day beat guys are. I think national people have their place. Everybody has their place. Everybody has their value in things. But if you're looking for someone at ESPN or some national person at On3 to have an opinion about a specific team, the way that the crazy amount of people who cover this team on a day-to-day have, that's not worth your ear right now. And that's with all due respect to national people. From the 201, Alabama fans complaining about Big Ten teams not playing anyone after they lost to an unranked team who lost 10 games last season, who is about to fire their head coach after another disappointing season, is hilarious. The SEC is overrated. Retweet. That's all I got there. I think there's two things here. I don't want to go long on the SEC Big Ten thing, at least not right now. Who would you rather be as a conference? Conference A has about 9 to 10, maybe 11 teams who are all around the same level of caliber. And so every single week does kind of feel like it's at any given Saturday you can lose a football game. And it makes for some entertaining football in September and October and maybe even early November. But you also look up at the end of the day and you don't think any of these teams have the capability of being a national championship contender. None of them are elite teams. They're all just fine. Or would you rather have what Conference B has? And that is, you probably have 3 teams where you go, if you start listing off who you think can realistically win a national title, who is realistically an elite football team, there's 3 teams from this conference on this list. But there's also 8 or 9 teams who are just abysmal football teams. Like, it's just, we're not really sure what's happening there. I think for me personally, I would rather be B, because the whole point of this is to win national championships. And Conference B is the one who's won the national championship the last 2 years. There was a time where Conference A was winning all the national championships, but they also had elite teams. I don't think there's an elite team in the SEC right now. And is Alabama starting to maybe pull some things together, and are they flirting with it? Maybe. Yeah, I think Alabama's got a whole 2014 Ohio State thing going on where they had a really bad loss early, and then it was like, okay, well, that was early. They figured it out, and now they're ready to go compete for a national championship. But the Big Ten has 3 teams in it who right now, I think if you told me they were going to be holding up a trophy in January, I'd be like, yeah, that makes sense. And it's Ohio State, Indiana, and it's Oregon. And I think the middle class is better than people want to give it credit for. I think Washington and Michigan and Illinois and Minnesota, I think those, like Maryland, I did the Big Ten Power Rankings on Monday, and Maryland has frustrated me because for the last 3 games, they've gone into the third quarter winning the football game, and then they've given up like 107 points and only scoring 7 points in the fourth quarter. So instead of being 7-0 right now and us going, hey, man, can they make this interesting? I know it's Ohio State, Indiana, but maybe Maryland belongs in the mix. They're 4-3. That's the epitome of any given Sunday. Maryland is a competent fourth quarter away. 3 straight weeks from being undefeated right now. But that's why we view Maryland the way we do. It's the way we view Mike Locksley the way we do, because that's a hypothetical. It's like, what if they had better fourth quarters? They haven't had better fourth quarters. And so that's the type of stuff I think about when people talk about the SEC as the Big Ten. The SEC's got a lot of okay teams who can all beat up on each other, and then it's like the Big Ten Conference in basketball. Everyone's going to beat up on each other in January and February, and then we're wondering why it's the Elite 8 and there's no Big Ten teams left, even though they had like 12 teams make the NCAA tournament. It's because none of them were good. They were all just C to B minus teams, and so they beat up on each other for 2 months. I love the Big Ten SEC war. It's made this fun. It's made some things fun. But I do hope the Big 12 and ACC put up some fights here. But I mean, I don't think anybody's expecting that. I think we all know where this is headed eventually. Everyone's going to get in one of these 2 conferences, and that's going to be that. From the 3-1-2, a couple more before we take a break. I'll do this one since it's kind of in the same vein. Alex from the 716, formerly the 614. One, I'm hearing more and more blowhard sports analysts talk about how deep and awesome the SEC is again, and how the Big Ten is shallow and questioning its top teams. Most of them still seem to like Ohio State, but am I fair to be suspicious that they can't wait for an excuse to tear OSU and the whole Big Ten down? How do you feel about the SEC? I think it's a fine conference, man. I think it's a fine conference. I think the Big Ten and the SEC are locked into the civil war every year, where until we get like the auto bid situations, I just think both conferences are going to get 3, and then they're going to be fighting to see who can get 4 and who can get 5, and they're going to be in this constant tango to see who can get more teams in the playoff every single year, and it's fine. That's why you hear a lot of this gesturing coming out of both camps in those situations. I think what's happened is the Big Ten's got teams that we weren't expecting to be good. They're good all of a sudden. Like Indiana is historically a terrible college football program, like god-awful college football program. Like, of the Power 4 schools, they're near the bottom of the list when it comes to caliber of play as a college football program. And then they hired Krajisnik, and all of a sudden they're the number 2 team in the country. They've lost 1 regular season game in 2 years, and it was to the team who's currently ranked above them on the road. Krajisnik's lost 2 games in his career so far, and it was the 2 teams who were playing for the national championship. Do y'all realize Indiana has not lost in Bloomington, Indiana yet? Since Krajisnik got there, they beat a team 63-10, who was in the top 10 at the time when they played them. They went to Oregon and won that game too. It's just, we gotta get used to this. Nick Saban was talking about this on Saturday. We were driving to Camp Randall Stadium, listening to College Game Day, and Nick Saban was talking about how he cannot wrap his mind around the idea that Vanderbilt is good at football because they were just like the game that was a give me. He can't wrap his head around the idea that a top 10 team in the country right now is good at football because it's not what he's used to. That is the problem with the SEC. That's the problem with like college football and the talking points right now. That's kind of the problem with the AP poll, if we're being real here, is this idea of if we think you're supposed to be good, then we're going to give you every opportunity to prove us right. And if we think you're supposed to be bad, the moment you lose, we're validated and you're out of here. And that's not the way it's supposed to work. Wrap your head around it, guys. Indiana's good. And they just gave that man an 8-year extension. They're not going anywhere. Maybe Vanderbilt finally made a hired a guy who was the right man for the job because he's a Vanderbilt guy. So he's found a way in this new world of college football where NIL and rev share and the transfer portal has created opportunities for some of these teams who have never been squat as college football programs to, if they put the necessary resources towards it, maybe they can take their best shot at things. Those types of teams all of a sudden are good at football. And it doesn't mean that Vanderbilt's going to become a new blue blood, which no, but you can't be a new blue blood. There's 8 or 9 of those, and those are the blue bloods. That's not about who's good in the moment. That's about like his history, and that's old money, college football. But we did all these things for 5 years that opened the door for Indiana and Vanderbilt to maybe do something if they hit. And so far, they have hit. So, to Saban's point of, I can't wrap my head around it, wrap your head around it. Vanderbilt's good. Indiana's good. Texas Tech is, oh, never mind. That's not a good example anymore. They lost a football game. But no, they're still a good football team. That was a bad loss. But some teams that we never thought would ever be part of the picture are now a part of the picture. And that goes for both the SEC and the Big Ten. I just think more than anything, Indiana is the prime example of that. It just feels like people are still waiting on Indiana to lose so we can drop them right back to where they think they belong. That's why Texas is ranked right now. They have no business being ranked. What have they done this year other than have the preseason number 1 ranking? If Texas had Vanderbilt's preseason expectations, they would not be ranked right now. I think the SEC is a fine conference. The second part, give me both sides of the argument here. Why should we think the game against the team up north will go any different? Do we see a changed staff who is going to let Sand cook against Michigan, or is Day going to try and put his tough pants back on and take the medium run game right at Michigan's defensive line for 60 minutes? Great question, and this is how I'll end the first segment of this. I actually think Ohio State could run the ball on Michigan this year. And hearing me say that feels like it's scratching nails to a chalkboard, because do not do it anyway. I think the difference is now the pressure is a little bit different. And get the text 614-350-3315 if you want to have rants, ask questions, get news, get analysis, get anything. Stefan is actually asking Ryan Day about Michigan on Tuesday. during his presser, and I think it's going to be the first time in a press conference situation that Ryan Day will have been asked about Michigan since Big Ten Media Days. I know someone on CBS did it when he did a TV spot, but in terms of presser, he got asked one question about it at Big Ten Media Days, and I think it was the worst way to ask that question. He just said, "What do you do about Michigan?" And he said, well, no, the question was, how do you beat Michigan? And he said, score more points than them, and then we just kind of moved on from it because that's not why we weren't there to talk about Michigan. We were there to talk to the reigning national champions who had 8 new starters on defense and were brilling in a new starting quarterback and a new offensive line and had some interesting transfers on offense. So it just wasn't the time. And then Texas obviously was the number one thing people were worried about. And then since the Texas game, it's been, wow, Matt Patricia is good. Wow, this offense is good. Wow, why is the offense playing? It's been things that actually are important in the moment and not, hey, what's going to happen on November 29th. And it doesn't mean people don't care about it. It's just we'll get to November 29th when we get there. And I think Stefan and I are both wondering if that is how Ohio State is viewing that game in a world where it doesn't change the cultural impact of what the results of that game are, but it does change the consequences. And that's what last year taught us. Those things are no longer linked together. You don't have to beat Michigan to win the Big Ten. You don't have to beat Michigan to win a national title. It doesn't mean you can go lose to Michigan. It doesn't make the loss okay. It just means the tangible consequences of that game change. The goals, the standards are still beat Michigan, win the Big Ten, win the national title. But for 100+ years, those things were tied together because you couldn't win the national championship if you didn't win the Big Ten. Well, you couldn't win the Big Ten if you didn't beat Michigan. So it started with beat Michigan because then it gave you the chance to do everything else. The moment we expanded this playoff to 12, that stopped being true. And it changed things forever in terms of the consequences. So I do wonder how that has changed approach for Ohio State. And that doesn't have to mean a negative thing. It just means approaching it in a way that feels like it's efficient, where you are honoring the rivalry, but it is not consuming your every being, because it has consumed his every being for 7 years, and the result is 1 win and 4 losses so far. Why am I confident that they won't handle it the same way? Because they would be fools to do so. I think this is a chance to reset it, because part of the problem with the last 3 years losing to Michigan is it was guys who were just used to losing to Michigan. And so all it took was for one thing to go wrong, and you could almost feel everybody in the stadium starting to get tight. When Will Howard got knocked out of that game, you could feel people starting to get tight. When he threw the first pick, you could feel people starting to get tight. When Caleb Downs got a pick and Ohio State missed the field goal, you could feel everybody starting to get tight. I think this era of Buckeyes right now, since we've reset things where Jack and JT and Tyleek and Denzel Burke and Mecca and Travion, all those guys are gone, these guys don't actually know any better, because there's only a handful of those guys this year who had significant roles in those Michigan games year in and year out. And so I do think this is an ignorance is bliss situation from a player standpoint, but from a coaching staff standpoint, because you'd be an idiot to do that. You'd be an idiot to keep doing the thing that's lost you 4 in a row and had you in maybe the darkest place you've been. So that's my answer. And maybe that's not a good answer, Alex. But that's my answer. Is because they would be idiots to approach it the same way they've approached it for the last 3 years. Does it mean they'll win the game? I don't know. There's still emotional ties to that game. Rivalries get weird and anything is possible. So I still don't know who I'm going to pick to win that game. My preseason prediction was Ohio State was going to finish the year 11-1, I believe, with that loss to Michigan. I don't know when it's actually time to make my game score 3 months later if that's going to be what I pick. Every football reason tells me I should pick Ohio State to win by 21 scores. As a person who grew up in Columbus, Ohio, and has watched this rivalry flip on its head the last 4 years, everything in me is screaming you should pick Michigan to win this game by 6 or 7 points. And I don't know which end I'm going to fall on. So I almost want to see, as it starts to build up towards that game, what does Ohio State look like? Do I feel like it's starting to get tight around the building over the next couple of weeks here? That might help me make my decision. Let's take a break, and then we'll get into some other topics. We've got Julian Sand, night game stuff, offensive line, Is it too good to be true what we're seeing from the Buckeyes, run game stuff, ticket stuff, and some JJ stuff that we'll get into after the first break here on Buckeye Talk.
The family that vacations together stays together. At least, that was the plan. Except now, the dastardly desk clerk is saying he can't confirm your connecting rooms.
Wait, what?
That's right, ma'am. You have rooms 201 and 709.
No, we cannot be 5 floors away from our kids.
The doors have double locks. They'll be fine.
When you want connecting rooms confirmed before you arrive, it matters where you stay.
Welcome to Hilton. I see your connecting rooms are already confirmed.
Hilton, for the stay.
Wish you could become a morning person? You know the type, up before the sun, early morning runs, first one to the office with donuts and a smile. How do they do it? Easy. With the new Galaxy Watch 8, sleep tracking and personalized insights from Samsung Health help you improve so you can wake up to a whole new you. One who, dare I say it, skips the snooze? It's possible. Train your sleep with Galaxy Watch 8. Learn more at Samsung.com. Requires compatible Samsung Galaxy phone, Samsung Health app, and Samsung account.
And we're back here on Buckeye Talk. Steven Means and our texter 614-350-3315. 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that. News, analysis. We do rants pods. I think we got to do a Q&A pod soon, too. We haven't done one of those in a while. We do surveys. There actually is a survey out right now to our texters for our live show on Wednesday at 11 a.m. We're going to be comparing this 2025 roster and just the makeup of the Ohio State Buckeyes of 2025 to the Ohio State Buckeyes of 2024 and trying to answer the question of who do we think is better between these two groups. It should be a fun conversation. The live time is a fun conversation. We got the chat there too. It's growing every week, and I appreciate people who have been tuning in and continue to tune in. It's a fun time. We try to hit bigger picture topics on that live show. And if you can't listen, it's still going to be available to you. It'll be in your feeds Thursday morning, that live show on Wednesday. So you'll still be able to get it if you can't get to us live. But I don't know, try to make it a part of your lunch, early lunch. We used to do noon, but we got a producer, and his schedule is in a way that it fits better for him to do it at 11 a.m. So that's the time we've started to do. Shout out to our producer, Brennan. He does a great job for us. He actually, he's a young kid. He's a college kid. So he started a TikTok and an Instagram for us. We have a Twitter too, but I think it's just at Buckeye Talk on all those things. I should probably have known that information before I said it, but here we are. Listen, this is how it works here. You know, I just kind of talk through it. Too good to be true is what I call the texts in this category because there were a few of them. From Todd in the 561, what could a diehard fan rant about? This team is a head and shoulders above the rest of college football. Who is going to beat them? Bama? LOL. I don't think so. It's a good rant. It's fair to feel that way. If there's a super team in college football, I think it's Ohio State. From the 614, my rant. Is it weird watching games this year? Almost no stress. Combo of coming off of a national championship with an expanded playoff. Don't feel the need to be perfect every game and every drive. Only thing is I wish we would put the hammer down and finish off games by halftime. I think that part of it, 614 ranter, is the con of some of the changes in college football. I think the NFLization of the way the game is played in terms of some of the clock rules, right? How the clock doesn't stop on first down every single time outside of the first 2 minutes, outside of 2 minutes, 2-minute warnings, right? More games. It takes 16 or 17 games to win a national title now. Like all these things, expanded conferences. I think we're watching the college football game get NFLized. Remember like 20 years ago when college football and NFL football looked very, very different, and which is why they called them pro-style offenses. Now everybody does that. And I don't think if you're looking for, and this is an extreme example, obviously, if you're looking for what Ohio State did to Michigan State in 2021 in that first half, I don't think we're going to see that ever again. I just don't think Ohio State's going to run enough plays in the first half to ever do that again. Because you know what? This game against Wisconsin over the weekend felt like that game. And they were up 17-0. And you were like, really? It feels like they're down it feels like Wisconsin's losing by like 40 already. Different clock rules, less possessions, but also the way Ohio State's approaching things, right? Like 4 years ago, they were running 70 plays a game. Now they're running 60.3 plays per game. It's just a different, more methodical approach. And it doesn't always tend itself to high-flying entertainment for 12 months. but they're doing what's necessary to tinker and work on things while also making sure that the necessary players get to the finish line. And so, unfortunately, you're going to see games where Wisconsin had no chance of winning that game, but they were down 17-0 at halftime. Illinois had no chance of beating Ohio State, but they were only down 20-3 at halftime. I just think those days of the entire fourth quarter is let's get the starters out of the game so we can see the backups and nobody gets hurt. I just think those days are over with. Games go by too quickly, and it does help lesser teams stand games, because if you are Illinois, you're down 20-3 and you're getting the ball back. It's like, okay, score, stop, score. All of a sudden, it's 20-17 before a blink of an eye, and that's just the world you live in. So it's almost who's controlling football games. And Ohio State has controlled all 7 of the football games it's played in. Even the Texas game, they only scored 14 points, but they were in control if you go rewatch that game. So look, if you look at it from that perspective, I just think it's unfortunate. It's an unfortunate death in college football that we don't get, Ohio State's up 45-0 on Indiana in 2021 at halftime. You're just not going to get that anymore. It's unfortunate. Justin from the 513, inconsistent run game. We've got to get the run game dialed in before the team up north. It's frustrating seeing the individual offensive pieces that this team has and still feeling like they've not put together a complete game. This could be by design, but I'd like to see it unleashed. Tegra Shabola, hands and face emoji. Matt Patricia will be the defensive coordinator of the year. They're doing things not done in this century. I agree. Don't get too comfortable. Sand will be the Heisman favorite by the end of the season. Smith will be in New York with him. Tate will get votes too. I've seen too many people say OSU is going to repeat as national champs. I want to see another school start getting some love there so Day has some sort of underdog talking points. He's going to turn into Kirby Smart in a minute, where he's going to be making up quotes and saying people didn't believe in your team and everybody believes in this team. And I love that. I love that type of psychotic behavior that coaches do. It's like, you've been the favorite in every game. What do you mean we didn't believe in you? I love that stuff from coaches. It makes for good content. From the 614, I understand the need to work on things throughout the season, i.e. the running game. However, I am not convinced that Ryan Day no longer believes he has something to prove, and that will once again rear its head against Michigan. Please be the aggressor, as we saw last year in the playoffs and versus Wisconsin. It's going to be a fun week for Michigan week, because I think that's going to be every question he gets. Actual Michigan week. It's going to be some variation of, are you going to try to run the ball, or are you going to use Jeremiah Smith and Cardinal Tate? And he's going to find a bunch of different ways to say, we're doing the latter, without ever actually saying they're doing the latter. And then we're going to be all on edge. And the first time they come out in pistol and run stretch to the boundary, everybody's going to be upset. I can't wait for that moment. From Mark in Chicago, I think a lot of media and presumably fans are getting ahead of themselves in their expectations of this team. I see several question marks. One, the run game, as has often been the case under Day, is obviously questionable due to one of all of the blockers. They're saying some, or maybe just one person, and I think that one person they're talking about is Tegra. Bo Jackson has to break tackles at the line of scrimmage far too often just to avoid negative rushes. Slashing Isaiah West might be crucial. Sand, and then number 2, Sand has been great, but he's also had several attempts this year down the sidelines, often near the end zone, that haven't had enough air under them, forcing the wide receivers, seemingly always JJ, to have to break up the attempt to avoid a pick 6. 3, as good as this team is against the run, it is not impenetrable the way that some of the John Cooper and even Jim Tressel teams were on first and second down. But this defense is great on 3rd and 4 type situations. The pass rush is streaky, not consistent. Is that due to the philosophy that Kenyatta Jackson discussed last week in the media? Not sure, and maybe that approach is just what they'll need against Bryce Underwood, but against experienced passers in the playoff, I think they need consistent heat that includes sacks, which I believe is largely what propelled them to the Natty run last year. Will Patricia dial up some of these things at Ann Arbor and the rest of the way? I hope so. Reese appears unstoppable when and if he's unleashed. So, again, saving the run stuff because I want to get to that all in one umbrella. I think the Julian Sand deep ball stuff with JJ, that'll lead me into what I'm going to do next. So I'm going to press pause there. The run defense isn't as big of a deal. I think it's not. No defense is perfect, right? Every defense has things about it. Like Jim Knowles used, and I know that's a curse word around here now, he called them escape hatches. There's no perfect defense. Every defense has an answer to it. If a team runs a too high shell, then you're probably hitting over the middle. If it's a one high shell, then the outsides are probably good. If they're playing off coverage, it's underneath. If they're playing press, you can go by a guy. If it's two high shell, you're probably running the ball a little bit more. If it's one high shell, you get a chance to maybe take some shots, right? There's no perfect defense. There's things you can do against odd fronts that you can't do against a even front and vice versa, right? If a team is playing a 3-3-5 versus a 4-2-5 or a 4-3 or a 3-2-6 or whatever else defense you want to, there's pros and cons to everything. A dime defense is built to stop the pass, but it's probably weak against the run. A 3 linebacker defense is probably good against the run, but probably isn't as great against the pass unless you've got elite cornerbacks out there, right? There's no perfect defense. And so Ohio State right now is 2.76 yards per attempt in the rushing game. That's 8th nationally and 1st in the Big Ten. And the teams ahead of them, Texas Tech, Pittsburgh, Toledo, Auburn, James Madison, Oklahoma, and Texas. Does Ohio State have a tendency sometimes when a team gets rolling, they start getting gassed in the interior? Yeah, they do. They do. And it's something that I don't think you can't overlook it, but it's one of those things where you play the game of, is it something, nothing, or everything? And I think it's something, but I don't know if it's enough something to become a problem, because as you kind of pointed out in your text, there's also an element to this that's like teams get to 3rd and 4 and they can't do anything, right? I think this defense is almost designed to put you in 3rd and long situations and then guys can get active. The reason why we haven't seen heavy sacks is Kenyatta, as you pointed out, did talk about this. The lack of sacks from the defensive line isn't because of the defensive line issues. And we're saying that in the world where I said this, I think, on the Monday pod. Here's the stat again. Here's what Caden Curry has done through his first 7 games this season. 34 tackles, 10 tackles for loss, 7 sacks, a pass breakup, a fumble recovery, 26 pressures, and 296 snaps. Here's Chase Young in 2019 when he went to New York through 7 games. 23 tackles, 10.5 tackles for loss, 9.5 sacks, a pass breakup, 3 forced fumbles, 30 pressures, and 269 snaps. Like, they're almost on par with each other. It's not – they played a bunch of teams early on who had scrambling quarterbacks. And so instead of attacking that guy and potentially overshooting him, and now that guy is turning something into something, like Damon Williams, Arch Manning can run a little bit, Parker Navarro could run a little bit. Instead, they played a caged him in style, contain, and it allowed for Arvell and Sonny to be the attackers. And I think what we saw against Minnesota and what we saw against Wisconsin, who don't have running quarterbacks, guys who can run, guys who are more mobile, is it gave Kenyatta Jackson specifically chances to maybe get into his pass rush moves and get after him without worrying about if he misses the guy, now he's 40 yards down the field. I think there are more quarterbacks like that coming up on the schedule. I think Purdue has a quarterback where you can try to get after him a little bit. Ethan Grunkemeyer, I mean, he's going to have 1 game of tape. Drew Aller could run a little bit, but now he's not going to be a starter. Ethan Grunkemeyer will. I don't know if Ethan is mobile as Drew Aller was, but I guess we'll find out. And then Bryce Underwood and Nico Iamaleava can wiggle a little bit. So some of this is the style of quarterback you're playing. You'd rather have your defensive lines being in contain and keeping contain versus trying to get after the passer. You go past the quarterback, as we saw with JT and Jack a lot last year early in the season before they locked in for the playoff, and all of a sudden the quarterback's gaining 4 yards when he should have been sacked, or it should have been a net 0 play. And I think that's what Matt Patricia is trying to prevent. I think he's trying to consistently put teams in 3rd and long situations, and then he starts dialing up blitzes, because they also don't blitz a lot right now. So there is a method to the madness. It's like on the offense, like just because the counting stats aren't there doesn't mean that something is being lacked. It just means they're not trying to go get that thing in the moment. I'm trying to see, is there anything else from Mark's text that I want to hit on right now before we move on? I think that might be it. I think that's it. Yeah, because we'll come back to the run game stuff in a second. Oh, the JJ thing. Yeah, Julian and JJ. Let's lead into this. From the 704, will Smith leave if he does not get the ball more? No, he's not going anywhere. He'll be here. Trust me. He's a wide receiver, so of course he wants the ball 45 million times a year. But he's fine. I can tell you pretty confidently, and that's not... Yeah, pretty confidently that he's fine. This is not a situation where if I don't get the ball, I'm going to leave. He's not even close to that. From the 813, does it seem like Jeremiah is not making the contested catches that he did last year? I know I'm nitpicking, and maybe some of the throws haven't been 100% on point, but I expect him to make those catches. I'm going to read through all the JJ ones, and then I'm just going to hit every single point. I think that might be the more efficient way to do this. From the 513, I don't want to hear anything more about Day making cases for OSU players to get the Heisman, specifically Julian or JJ. If you don't let them loose all the time to earn the stats, stop talking about it. Day is in full control of their approach, and if he wants to be conservative, the ability to get some of these individual awards will be limited. From the 216, I know I sound crazy right now, but I just feel like something's off with JJ. Those 2 shots he had on Saturday in the end zone, he would have caught it no matter what the coverage last year. His body language seems different as well. Am I off, or is this a legit conversation? Okay, so let's talk about JJ. Through 7 games this season, Jeremiah Smith has caught 49 passes for 602 yards and 7 touchdowns. And he's touched the ball 51 times this year. And that is on 61 targets, I believe, if I have that correct. No, 63 targets. His 63 targets are 11th in the country right now. His catches, 49 catches, is first in the Big Ten, right? First in the Big Ten, yeah. It's first in the Big Ten, and it is 6th in the country. His 602 yards is tied for 14th in the country and 4th in the Big Ten. And his 7 touchdown catches is tied for 2nd in the Big Ten and is tied for 5th nationally. JJ's fine. To the point of the, hey, how come you're not making as many acrobatic catches as you made last year? Fair. But that's also kind of the point, right? Like last year when he was making some of those catches, it was like, you're not supposed to make that catch. And so I think JJ's being held to a crazy standard because he's the best wide receiver in college football and might be the best wide receiver prospect that we've seen since Julio Jones. So I get it. It's almost like LeBron in his prime. If he scores 21 points, has 5 rebounds and 4 assists, for most players, it's like they had a pretty good game. For LeBron, we're going, what? What's wrong with LeBron James? Why is he choking? Right? It's one of those things. I think the deep ball thing is fair. I think him and Julian are still figuring that out. And I think part of the reason they're still figuring that out is on game days, and I mentioned this on the Monday pod, the one stat that is interesting for me for Jeremiah Smith is the fact that he's averaging 5 yards per catch than he was averaging last year. He was at 17.3 last year. He's at 12.3 this year. And that's because he gets a lot of double coverage, man. He gets a lot of double coverage. He gets a lot of, they're playing a cornerback and they're shading a safety over his side. Teams are just not going to let JJ do that. And so they've tried to find other ways to get Jeremiah Smith the ball. And it's working. Again, 49 catches for 602 and 7 touchdowns. Here's another comparison for you. Through 7 games. In 2024, through 7 games, he had 37 touches for 656 yards and 9 touchdowns. Through 7 games this year, 51 touches for 622 and 8 touchdowns. He's on par with where he was last year. I just think he hasn't had the catch Carnell Tate had, his first touchdown catch where he caught it over 2 people and they ripped his helmet off. Jeremiah Smith hasn't had a catch like that this year. That's, I think, what is missing and why we're thinking, hey, what's wrong with JJ? Nothing's wrong with JJ. He just doesn't get as much one-on-one coverage as Carnell Tate gets right now, which is why Stefan and I had that conversation about, do we ever see that flipped? Do we ever see a team decide, well, Carnell's been the one who's been killing everybody, let's take him away instead? And does that open things up for Jeremiah Smith? But again, he has more catches than any other wide receiver on this team has targets. 49 catches. Carnell Tate has 41 targets. So they're getting him the ball. It just hasn't been explosive with him yet. And it hasn't been explosive with him because teams are doing everything they can to take him away. It's not, yes, is it frustrating? Yes. And I know he has said all the right things in front of microphones of like, oh man, well, it just means Carnell gets to eat. It just means that Max Clare and, Brennan Ennis and the running backs get to eat. But I get it. He's still a competitive dude who wants to get the ball. And they're getting in the ball. I just think the impact of it, even the 7 touchdowns, like how many of those are, goal line, let's just get Jeremiah Smith a touchdown real quick type of touchdowns versus impactful play touchdowns. And I think that's what people are waiting on. And I do think we start to see more of that as we get into November here. Okay, let's get into the run game. I was going to look up a bunch of numbers for this, but I think I just want to talk about it because I don't know if people want to be numbered to death all the time. From Bill in Salem, Massachusetts, WTF is up with our running game. Why can they not design a run game minus Chip Kelly? Also, is this line actually good? Sand has to move a lot in the pocket and no holes in the run game. I have a dread that Michigan is going to expose a bad line and the D will tire against a team with a mobile QB. Recipe for disaster. They need to tinker. Now, I think they are. Seriously, I just think the Tegra thing has like run its course, and you got to try something else there. And I think part of the problem is Ethan Inyawa, who was originally supposed to be a starter for you, is now a backup, and now he's not even a backup for you. He's a bench player. But I do think they've spent the last 2 weeks getting Josh Padilla involved in a way where Tyler Bowen has to make a decision over the next 2 weeks, and I do wonder if the decision he makes is to pull Tegra, and we start to see a flip there where it's been Tegra the starter playing the most of the snaps and Josh Padilla rotating in, and now we see the inverse of that where Josh Padilla starts and Tegra Shabola is rotating in because it's not going well. I think the offensive line had a bad day on Saturday. Granted, they also did a lot of pass pro. That's the most. Again, they threw 42 times. That's not balance. It's the balance we all want, but that is something to get used to. Every offensive line would rather run back than pass pro, and they did a lot of pass pro on Saturday, and so they got maybe more than they've got at any time this season. I'm not worried about the O-line yet, but they need to make a change at right guard. It's reached that point where they need to make a change at right guard. What's happened with James Peoples? He's not playing well enough. I think that's all it is. I genuinely think that's all it is. And I actually don't think James Peoples is playing that bad. I just think Bo Jackson and Isaiah West are playing that well. And so you got to play the guys who are playing the best. And it's unfortunate. And could that flip back the other way? It seems like Carlos Loughlin trusts all four of those guys now. Yes, we could get to Indiana and Indianapolis, and all of a sudden James Peoples got the ball 17 times. And we're like, wow, good for James Peoples sticking with it. We definitely thought that was done with. But it's just right now, I just think of the three guys who are not situational backs, which is what I think C.J. Donaldson is at this point, he's the guy in third and long. He's the guy in third and short. If it's a specific situation, he is going to be the back out there until I see otherwise. So of the other backs who are just like down backs, Bo Jackson, Isaiah West, and James Peoples, I just think those two are playing better than he is right now. And it kind of is what it is there. From the 306, understanding it is a first world problem, I am not impressed with our ability to run block. I think many of those woes in the run game are due to shoddy O-line play. And from the 576, stop running up the gut, run to the outside where you have more elite wide receiver blockers on DBs than you do O-linemen on defensive tackles and linebackers. Preach, 576, preach. I think this offense is still trying to figure out what its best run game identity is, and it took them a long time to do it last year. They had 9 months to figure it out when their offensive line was Simmons, Jackson, McLaughlin, Shabola, and Fryer, and then guys started falling off because of injuries, and so they had to spend another 2.5 months figuring out how to run the ball. They went from an inside-outside zone team to a counter and gap scheme type of run game, and I'm trying to figure out if that's what's happening here. Is we're just seeing a season-long approach to how do we want to run the ball with this group? How do we want to run the ball with a group where it's Sierraville, Montgomery, Hinsman, Padilla, Onyawa, or Tegra? I don't know what's going to happen there. And Phillip Daniels, are they still trying to figure out where their best runs are? But it's not just with them, it's with these running backs. What are they best at? What is the best way to get to the second level with this group of running backs, with this O-line? Because some of the stuff they try, you see a running back running down the back of an offensive lineman. There are other plays where you see an offensive lineman doesn't even execute the block, and so now you got a guy trying to make a move in the backfield. He's just trying to get back to even. I think they're just still trying to figure it out. And I think that's why they spent a lot of the time doing what they did over the last 7 weeks. And yes, some of it was playing slow and methodical, but some of it was trying to figure out how they want to run the freaking ball, and I don't think they know how to do it yet. I don't think they know what works yet. And so I'm wondering, that's almost, they might come out and just try to run the ball against Penn State because they're still trying to figure stuff out. I don't know. I don't even know. I know they don't know. So I don't know at all if they don't know what the best way to run the ball with this team is. I do know they have two guys where if you get them to the second level, they can do some stuff. They just can't ever seem to get to the second level consistently. So that's what they got to figure out how to run the ball with this group. And we're 7 games in and they haven't figured out how to do that yet. It's a first world problem, but it's a real problem because this is not about they need to be able to run the ball so they can have an identity in running the ball. They need to be able to run the ball so when a situation shows itself where they need to run the ball, they need to get the yard, they can get the yard. And right now they don't know how to do that. Their scheme, their approach, their identity to the run game, they have not run the ball well. I also don't know what their run game identity is through 7 games. And I think that solving that problem might solve a lot of these other issues where it feels like when they run the ball, they're getting 1 or 2 yards, and it makes it feel like the offense is mundane and doesn't know what it's doing. So that's why I wanted to save it, because that's my overall take at this point. I don't think Ohio State knows what its best way to run the ball is. And until they figure out that, we're going to continue to see a run game that looks like it's hitting its head up against a brick wall. Our last break here, and then I'll come back and wrap up with some ticket things, some yelling at Fox again, and then also some special teams things here on Buckeye Talk.
Finish training for the day? Time to fight post-workout fatigue with Core Power Protein Shakes. They're packed with 26 grams of high-quality protein to build muscle and electrolytes to help hydrate. The nutrition you need to help your body replenish, rebuild, and repair post-workout so you can power on to the next one. Champion your recovery with Core Power. Visit corepower.com to learn more.
Big news. Sephora is now on Uber Eats. So if you find yourself facing a beauty emergency, like needing a last-minute gift or you're just out of your favorite mascara, again, don't panic. We got you. Order now and get $10 off on Sephora orders of $50 or more on the Uber Eats app. Order now. Offer ends October 30th. 1 order per customer. Additional terms apply. See app for availability. Delivery fees may apply.
And we're back here on Buckeye Talk. Steven Means in our texter, 614-350-3315. It's a rants pod, running through things, just trying to get to the mind of our texters and how they're feeling about their 7-0 Buckeyes, who are the number 1 team in the country right now. Here's another rant from Melissa in Charleston, South Carolina. What's up, Melissa? One of our favorites. Why don't we have more night games? Dang it. I know, Fox. I know. Listen, the good news is there's 5 years left on these TV contracts. So this is not going away anytime soon. Some ticket things before we get out of here. From the 941, here's my rant, and I'm sure many would agree. I have tickets to the Penn State game. As with every game this year and past years, I don't know game time until game week, so unable to make any weekend Saturday plans ahead of time. I'm from out of town, so flying in and out, but it's worse for Ohioans coming into town the day of the game. This is the result of ceding all control to TVs and cable networks. Yes, I know it's all about money, but still there should be a happy medium. To be honest with you, the happy medium right now is we typically find out 13 days out, so this is officially the Ohio State Penn State game will be at noon. That's typically what happens. The ones we don't find out in the preseason or in the offseason. Typically what we found out in the preseason is week 1 and then the Michigan game. And then after that, a few others maybe. We'll find out maybe week 2 and week 3 before the season starts. And then you get into the 10-day window, the 13-day window, the 14-day window stuff. And that's where we're at right now. We've been saying that the Penn State game was going to be at noon for a month and a half, though. So it's not shocking. It's just now that it's official. That game is going to be at noon on Fox. This is actually a good rant because there's no answer to it. It's just that's almost what rants are. It's this thing. It grinds my gears, but I'm not really sure if we can have a solution to it. It's just kind of is what it is. But it is a frustrating thing. I get it. You want more night games. I want more night games. I like night games. I like covering night games. Yeah, for my job as a company man, noon games are probably the most ideal for my sleep schedule and just my own personal life. But I also like college football, and everybody likes the games under the night. You know what the coolest game I covered was last year? The Tennessee game, because it was at night and it was a theme and it was fun, regardless of who was going to win the game. That was cool. The Michigan game obviously is its own thing. That's always going to be fun. But playing, I still have not experienced a whiteout at Penn State because I've been to State College twice. No, 3 times. The first time I went, it was during COVID, so it was a night game, but nobody was there, so it didn't matter. And the other 2 have been at noon. So I like night games. We all like night games. We grew up liking night games. We all went to high school. It's Friday Night Lights, right? We all love that stuff. Monday night football, Thursday night football, Sunday night football. That's what we like. From the 614, why can't the Big Ten come up with a better way to buy championship game tickets? They need an option to buy for your team. If your team doesn't make it, you get a refund. I'm confident OSU will make it, but the tickets you can buy today are very limited. I would love to buy better tickets. I don't actually know what the answer for that is. I actually don't. And I don't know if there's a better way to do that either, because there is an element here of you don't want to put them out there too early. But it's also kind of funny because every year at the Big Ten Championship, they'll televise a guy where it's very obvious that they bought these tickets before they realized their team wasn't going to be playing in the Big Ten Championship game. And I always think that's very, very funny. But I don't know if there's a better way to do that, but I think that's a good rant. A couple of special teams things that we'll get into before we get out of here. From the 412, it is a simple rant. Ryan Day's special teams are atrocious. I've been following the Buckeyes since Howard Hopalong Cassidy. I can't think of a time in those 70 years other than Ryan Day's 10 years as a head coach when Ohio State's special teams were constantly screwing up. Field goal kicking failed us in the playoff against Georgia. Last season's ultra choke job against Michigan. It could easily ruin this season. From the 574, why does it seem that special teams / field goal kicking is a constant problem at Ohio State? Why are we incapable of producing top-level kicking talent? To Steven's point on the pod this morning, it's not that fielding has been awful, but it's been a big enough problem in big-time games that we are to a point of saying just go for it instead of taking the 3 points. We've already seen inconsistent kicking cost us a shot at the national championship, so it's maddening that it's still a topic of discussion. And from the 419, special teams is giving me an aneurysm. Every time we kick a field goal, punt, or return, I get more stressed than a normal situation. Ryan promised to get it fixed, but it hasn't been fixed. It's better, but this isn't fixed. And then also, Stefan, since you love ice cream so much, there's a Columbus Clippers hat that has an ice cream helmet on the logo. I'll make sure to pass that along to Stefan. I'm going to make sure he sees that. I'm also obsessed with ice cream, but I guess like Stefan's like weirdly obsessed with ice cream, which has been news to me. I think I learned that when we were in Seattle, that he's in love with ice cream this much. So I will make sure he sees that. From the 703, Nick McClarty needs to be the punter, even if he isn't the best right now and he's a little inconsistent. It would be better than whatever McGuire is doing. I think Nick McClarty is a quarterback 2 situation where it's like there's a reason he's not playing. So sometimes I look at it from this perspective, and it's not always true, right? It's not always true. We're learning that right now with Josh Padilla and Tegra Shabola, where it's gotten to a point where you're showing us the guy behind him while also the guy in front of that guy behind him is actively not playing well. Let's see the guy behind him a little bit more. Nick McClarty has been here for 2 years, and the one punt he did have against Illinois, it wasn't a great punt. Like, it wasn't like he was showing us something that the other guy didn't have. I think his leg is stronger, but that leg being strong means nothing if you're just kicking into the end zone and teams are getting at the 20-yard line anyway. I think kicking, because they also have a kicker who's a transfer, whose name, Jack Corvell is, I think his name, who, I mean, that guy's made a 50-yarder in his career. He can't play either. If this is the best Ohio State has to offer with its special teams unit in a world where you brought in another freshman last year in Nick McClarty and you went and got a transfer kicker, if this is still the best you have to offer is the guys who had the jobs last year and this is what they're doing, that tells me everything I need to know about the special teams operation right now. And that's not a slight against Rob Keys and what they're doing in that room. It's just you have told us that you care about special teams, and yet this is what you have been putting out. And this is not a Parker Fleming issue anymore because Parker Fleming's been gone for 2 years. I don't know if it's going to cost them a game or not, like it did the last couple of years, but it's definitely like, it's not great. It's just not. It's something that I can't believe we're still talking about it type of bad, right? Of all the things that we have to talk about on a weekly, it's special teams to me in the year 2025 of our Lord is like brushing your teeth. Like, you need to brush your teeth because if you don't, you're going to lose your teeth over time. But it's also, if you're like 25 years old and people are still having to tell you as a of sound mind human being, hey, you have to remember to brush your teeth every single day. If we're this age and you're still having to be told that, it's not that it's a problem. It's just like, why are we still having to tell you to brush your teeth at 25 years old? You know what I'm saying? right? Like drink some water. Like that's like something that's like basic stuff. Why are you 25 and we're still having to tell you every day to brush your teeth? That's how I feel about special teams. It doesn't mean that you have to be dentist level brush your teeth where like every single time you take a bite of something, you're flossing and using the fluoride and you're going to the dent. Like, you don't have to be all that, man, but just like brush your teeth, man. Basic hygiene stuff. Just brush your teeth. And that's how special teams just feels like it was cool that Caleb Downs took a touchdown to the house, like took a punt return to the house against Indiana, but I don't know if they needed, in that game they did, it kind of flipped the game. But overall, if they go another decade without returning a punt for a touchdown, I don't know if I'm going to be like, shame on you for not taking something to the house that barely goes to the house anyway. If they don't ever take another kick return to the house, if they just go back there, the ball gets kicked, and either it goes into the end zone or you wave your hand in the air and get the offense on the field, fine. Because that's just like competent. You just did the basic part of your job. The issue isn't that they're not doing the basic part of their job. It's that they're not doing the basic part of their job sometimes, and they're also adding in mistakes. Like, you can't miss a tackle of a punter on a fake punt that's not a real punt. Kudos to Brandon Ennis. He's done a better job over the last couple of weeks. He put the fear of God in me on a couple of those punt returns where he probably should have let him go in the end zone, but he ended up turning it into something positive, so that's fine. But that's what I'm talking about. What Brandon Ennis has done at punt return the last couple of weeks, can that be every phase of special teams, please? Where sometimes something cool happens, but for the most part, you get the ball, you execute the basic part of the job, and you move forward. That's all I'm asking for. We can worry about, hey, can the dude make 50-yarders later? Let's just do the let's make 35-yard field goals routine. Let's start there before we start doing all this other stuff. Because even what they did against Minnesota, where Brandon Ennis caught the punt and then he threw it over to Lorenzo Styles and he got a major play out of it. That's cool. I like that. But that should be a bonus, not the expectation. And right now, that stuff is almost necessary because you're pairing it with some weird stuff just going on a special teams. Like, why can't we punt past 42 yards consistently? It's normal. This is normal stuff. It's normal stuff, man. Just be normal. Just brush your teeth. Just brush your teeth. Just brush your teeth. From the 419, have you guys been showing the latest Sunday morning polls? No, I was saving those for today. I was saving them for the day. The poll I sent around during the game on Sunday was the wide receiver duos. It was, which one do you think is the best of the Ryan Day era? 2025 with Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate. 2020 with Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, or 2022 with Marvin Harrison Jr. and Emeka Egbuka. JJ and Carnell won by a landslide. They got 63% of the first place votes. Garrett and Chris got 23% of first place votes and 34% of the second place votes, while Marvin and Emeka got 41% of the second place votes and 45% of the third place votes. Garrett and Chris had 23 first place, 34 second place, 42 third place votes. So they were like across the board. Just they got a healthy amount of votes everywhere. I don't know if I'm shocked by that. JJ and Carnell are two 6'3", 6'4" dudes who could run fast and are outside dudes who are dogs. I feel like Jeremiah and Carnell are Garrett and Chris on steroids. And Marvin and Emeka, I think, are the best marriage because one's inside, one is outside. But I do understand why JJ won a little bit more. Let's see here. From the 4-4-0, for the love of God, continue to rotate the wide receivers. Pushed Ennis and he got a TD. Graham and Porter each made memorable plays. Keep it going. I liked our tight ends, but please don't go back to playing in a phone booth. Run game still sketchy, but saying is good enough. You should use the pass to set up the run. Last but not least, time to have the uncomfortable conversation with certain guys. Certain guys have had plenty of time to get it together. Padilla should start, and the two best running backs are West and Bo. Do with that info as you will at this time. That is all. I agree with all of those things. We'll wrap up with these last two rants. From the 513, not a rant, but a hopeful LOL. Second half of the season, do we see them sling it more? Ryan Day made a comment in the post-game interview while on the field. The team identity came up, and he said something along the lines that if we think this is the identity, it has to be brought every week, not on one week and off the next. Let's keep our fingers crossed for 35 to 40 throws a game. I don't think they're going to be living in the 35 to 40 throws a game range, but as we talked about on the Monday pod, I think they can live in the range of, for every 2 throws, they run it once, 2 to 3. 2-to-1 ratio. I'm fine with that ratio. 2-to-1. 2-to-1 ratio. Or, and I don't even know if this math makes sense. I'm not great at math. This is why I do this for a living. I talk and I write. Or 2/3. I think 2/3 of your plays could be passes. And maybe that's extreme, and maybe you say that for the playoff, or maybe for the season, you're at 55 to 60%, and then you ramp that up to 60 to 65% during the playoff because you're also playing indoors for a lot of those playoff games, unless you're playing in the Rose Bowl or in a national championship game. Though that's kind of indoors, right? It's like a fake dome situation because the stands are covered, but the field is not necessarily covered, which I'm scared of. I hope it doesn't rain if we get to the national championship game again with this team. Probably. I think they're opening it up now. November is here, right? This is the time to start ramping up and doing what you're going to be this year. And it doesn't mean that we're not going to see some of those things we saw early in the season, but it just means we're going to see what we've seen against Minnesota and Wisconsin, maybe more. I think it'll be game plan specific. It'll be opponent specific, but dictating it on your terms, I think, is also just as important. Lastly, from the 941, I think this new world of college football, we need to put to rest the idea of beating an unranked team isn't a big deal. Sure, there are Grambling States games, but as we've seen so far this year, unranked teams have the ability to do some damage. The fact that OSU has taken business is a big deal and certainly not something that other good teams have done. They need more credit and less talk about a light schedule. I think the portal, NIL, all these different things has shrunk the gap. Because there's not this depth of talent everywhere anymore to where the first half is interesting, but then the depth of talent takes over, and so all of a sudden a team loses a game 45-13. I think there's enough talent on both ends where there are going to be a lot more games where somebody wins them 38-17. And then there's Ohio State, where that entire statement I just said is absolutely positively false. My favorite thing about this game over the weekend, and I asked Caden Curry about it after the game. I don't think I did a good job of asking it, though, because he didn't give the greatest answer. But the thing I loved about the shutout, because the thing about shutouts like that, not shutouts where you win it 7-0 or 13-0, shutouts where you're winning it where your starters are probably not out there for the final drive, is it takes the backups to be just as invested in making sure they retain the shutout as the starters were invested in making sure a shutout was available. And that's what I love. That's what the depth of talent I'm talking about. You look at Ohio State's backups when they get an opportunity to play. Some of these guys might be starters next year. Aaron Scott might be a starting outside cornerback in 12 months here. And look at he made one of the biggest plays of the game. The game was decided, but memorable plays. That hit was big. That's why I was so adamant about when Leroy Roker missed a tackle. That's why it's a big deal, because, like, Leroy, you're playing right now. Lorenzo Styles was available to play, but he did not play, which means when they went to those dime packages, Leroy Roker was the third safety out there, playing in Lorenzo Styles' role. That's important. Riley Pettijohn, what he has shown early in his career here. Devin Sanchez is like a co-starter with how they use him now, so I'm not putting him in the depth conversation. I think Zion Grady's looked very good and has flashed. I think Jarquez Carter has looked good when he's had an opportunity to flash. I think Bryce West has looked very good when he's had opportunities to flash. We mentioned it earlier, the rotation at wide receiver. It's not deep. It's not a crazy rotation, but I do think that Mylan Graham and Quincy Porter getting 5 to 10 snaps a game is okay. I think there's nothing wrong with that. And they looked very good. Carlos Loughlin going deep into the running back room. Keenan Bailey going deep into the tight end room, right? At us exploring options at the offensive line. Right? I think this is healthy. I think this is a good thing. I also think it is a testament to the fact that in this world where nobody has a depth of talent like that anymore because the portal and NIL and all these other things exist now, somehow Ohio State still has a depth of talent. Somehow Ohio State has a cornerback room that has a starter who might be a first-round draft pick, another starter who is a turnover magnet. Their backups are 2 5-star recruits. That's crazy to me. Where I think Aaron Scott in his moments has played well enough that if something happened and all of a sudden Jermaine's playing nickel and your outside corners are Devin and Aaron Scott, I'm not batting an eye. To me, I'm just looking at that as them getting more opportunity to show some things. And that is a testament to the program Ryan Day's built, that somehow this is one of the few places that has still held on to the old days idea of the reason why the top is so much better than the bottom is because when you get to your 2s and 3s and the game is in the third quarter, that's what takes over. I cannot believe they still have this much depth. It's insane that they have this much depth still. Kudos to Ryan Day for that, for having this much depth still on both sides of the ball. And the way they're recruiting right now, there's no reason to believe that depth is going away anytime soon. Get the text 614-350-3315. It's a 2-week free trial. That was fun. Those were some rants. I'm going to try to do these a little bit more often now. We'll probably do some Q&A pods as well. We're going to try to do some different things. I know we haven't been as, consistent with the Tuesday stuff, but just because we like to use this time to prepare for the live show, and we're really trying to put a lot of energy and focus into making that live show on Tuesdays as good as it possibly can be, as great as it can possibly be. But to 941's point, because I think I went on a rant about the talent depth, and I completely forgot what the point of that was, of how, there's no such thing as a light schedule. I think Ohio State's, the way they've beaten teams has created a false narrative about what these teams are. Illinois is a good football team. Minnesota's been a good football team. Washington's a good football team. Ohio State's just better than everybody else. So Illinois scored 16 points, where 7 of those points came in kind of like cheap garbage time. Minnesota scored 3 points and Washington scored 6. Wisconsin's that bad of a football team. They're bad. But the other 3 games they played during this second part of the season, those are 3 good football teams. It's just Ohio State's better than everybody else. This idea that Ohio State's not playing anybody, part of the reason you don't think these teams are much of anything is because of how they've played against Ohio State. That's not the bar. That's not the bar at all. Ohio State, how you play against Ohio State for a lot of these teams is not the bar. They're the best team in the country. Look at how they've played against everybody else. Washington. That's why the Washington-Michigan game was so disappointing. I cannot believe they lost that game the way they lost that game. They're a better team than that. At least I thought they were a better team than that. People thought coming into the Ohio State game, Washington deserved to be ranked. Minnesota lost a bad game to Cal. They look pretty good since then. Nebraska, they have a ranked win. Technically speaking, Ohio State and Minnesota have the same amount of ranked wins this year. So, actually, that's not true. Illinois was ranked. So never mind, that's not true. They have 1 less ranked win than them. But the Minnesota's a good football team. I think the Big Ten's in a good place. I think it's a good conference and a lot of good teams in it that we have to start giving it credit. And not just looking at it just because they got 2 really elite football teams in Indiana and Ohio State, and then another team knocking on the door of elite, and that's Oregon. That doesn't mean the rest of the conference stinks. It just means that there are 3 teams who can win a national championship in that conference. I don't know how many other conferences in the country can say that right now. 614-350-3315, 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that. That'll do it for our texters. We'll talk with Ryan Day today and bring you all that information. Sign up for our YouTube channel. It's at Buckeye Talk on YouTube, and go follow us on any social media platform. I think it's just Buckeye Talk on all those platforms. I'm Stephen Means. Talk to you guys later.